Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com, and I'm here with
Dr. Howie Jacobson of AskHowie.com.
Okay, neither of us are medical doctors. We're the PhD kind. So, Howie, I wanted to talk to you today about just an interesting little insight and an angle on overeating that most people don't talk about, and I think there's a cultural misperception about. Would that be okay?
I love me a good cultural misperception.
Well, there's no shortage of those. Okay. And this comes from a quote of the week that I wrote for my audience. And the quote actually comes from someone else that I had on the radio show. Her name was Heather Lyle, and she's my favorite yoga teacher. And I asked her, she wasn't super familiar with my methods, but she's had her own journey with eating. And I said, well, what do you do if you get over involved with something hyper palatable? And she said, oh, my thing is really potato chips. That's what my problem's always been. And I said, well, how do you know how to stop? She said, well, I get to a certain point where I say, that was delicious, but now it's over. And I found that a little bit haunting. It just kind of sat with me for a while. And I tried to figure out why it was that I found that so profound. Okay. And then I thought that I'm often asked how to stop a binge in its tracks once you start. Answer is what Publius Cyrus said 2,000 years ago, that it's much easier to cross a river at its source. So don't let it start, catch it when it's a trickle, not a roaring stream. But nevertheless, some people, especially in the modern food environment, get involved with food and they start binging and it becomes a roaring stream and it feels like trying to stop a train in its tracks, if you'll allow me to mix metaphors. There are techniques for recovering your rational brain and seriously mitigating the damage once a binge begins. And so this kind of falls into that area. The other techniques would be, if there aren't any medical contraindications, to mix up a half pound of leafy greens with about a half blender full of water and drink it down fairly quickly. See, the reason that works is that when you're ingesting some hyper-palatable junk food, which is mostly what people binge on, ice cream, bars, cookies, cakes, candies, popcorn, when you're ingesting that kind of hyper-palatable information, you're confusing the survival drive in your reptilian brain. And your brain actually thinks it's keeping you alive by driving you to eat more of it. It says, ooh, this is a scarce caloric and nutritional resource. This is where the good stuff is. You got to go get that. This is the most important thing in your life right now. And that's why we get that feeling like just hand over the chocolate and nobody gets hurt. When you're drinking down a half pound of leafy green vegetables, you're reminding your survival drive that there's good stuff elsewhere. I use that as an example of something healthy to reorient your survival drive towards, because there's a lot of dietary argument about, should we have plant-based stuff? Should we have meat? Should we have high fat or low fat? But there's not really a lot of argument about whether it's a good idea to have some tender leafy greens. Maybe a little bit, but 92% of doctors out there would probably say this is a good idea. By reintroducing the actual good stuff, you remind your brain what it really needs to survive. Of course, you could still override this and continue binging if you wanted to, but the drive to do so after you drink that half pound of leafy greens doesn't feel nearly as compulsive. But the other thing that helps is to avoid denying the urge. When the urge strikes, when people light the fire and they're beginning to binge, they get caught up in being very frightened of acknowledging just how delicious the junk really is, because they think that's going to make them want it more. The truth is, it's almost entirely the opposite. because pretending more junk wouldn't be delicious wastes precious mental energy in trying to deny reality. Jumping up and down and screaming, no, 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 it would taste awful in order to try to stop is nothing less than exhausting when you know full well it's a lie and it refocuses you on how delicious it actually is. But if you take a moment and breathe and say, it is delicious, but it's over now, in some way that you're not going to make all your food decisions based upon pleasure, but rather using an intellectual assessment of what's best for you. We gently reaffirm that in spite of the fact, or because it's so delicious, we're going to make a decision to stop it. So that's delicious because now it's over. It's one of the simplest ways to stop wasting energy denying it, stop refocusing yourself on how delicious it actually was, get away from the conflict and just walk away from it. So I'm not sure how well I'm explaining this, but I'm finding in working with clients with this that that's a helpful thing to say, and it does mitigate the damage when people begin to overeat. What do you think?
It first reminded me of a song when I was a little kid, and my father would be sitting at the piano waiting for my mother to get dressed for them to go out somewhere. He had like 3 songs that he'd play, and one of them was, I'm not even sure where, some movie. It was called Take Me in Your Arms. And I heard it, thousands of times as a kid, 3 years old, 4 years old. So it was only like when I thought about it recently that I realized like the song is about, we're breaking up, but let's do it one more time. And it's a torch song. So it's a song, take me in your arms before you take your love away.
Right? It's a nice singing voice. I didn't know you could sing like that.
Oh, listening to it that much, 10,000 hours of listening to my father pretending to be Frank Sinatra. Even like when I didn't understand what it meant, like I knew there was a poignancy to it and a sadness. It's weird to think about, like, why are sad songs like the most popular songs in the world? There is this drive. And when you said, like, what your yoga teacher, Heather Lyle, said, like, it's delicious and it's, what does she say? But it's over now, or?
That was delicious, but now it's over.
But now it's over. That's like a song. That was wonderful, but now it's over. You can feel the sadness. And there's almost a deliciousness to the sadness. And that's what came to me, that one of the things that we eat junk food for is to not feel things like sadness.
Oh, that's interesting.
And to say, okay, I have to stop now. I was really looking forward to the next 9 cookies. And I have to grieve a little. And to be able to say it in this sort of heartfelt language of presence and reality feels almost like it's its own kind of nourishment.
I love the way you're saying that. It's a way of becoming grounded in reality, being present, accepting the sadness that life isn't a big pleasure party. And there are some pleasures we can only have a little bit of. And there's some pleasures we can have none of. But that's okay because there can be pleasure in accepting the sadness also. That was delicious and now it's over.
Yeah, maybe someone should write that song.
I have a candidate. And as someone with a good voice and a guitar in the background.
See, I was thinking Taylor Swift, but I guess I just need to
pick up the guitar. We'll sing it. Let's make it happen.
All right. So it's got to be a minor key, right?
Okay.
That was delicious, but now it's over. It's hard for me to hear with the. I'll work on it.
Okay.
All right, we got, Clover or Cliffs of Dover or Who Ran Over Rover?
All my food is not a 4-leaf clover. I don't know. Okay, well, thank you, buddy. I love it.
Cool. That's a great framing and a great reminder for me. Thank you.
That was delicious, but now it's over.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.